Shalom Aleichem. Welcome to the Breslov weekly Parsha. This Parsha is Parsha's Devarim, the first Parsha and the last book of the Chumash. It also is called Shabbos Chazon because the Haftorah starts off Chazon Yeshayahu ben Amot. Okay, Devarim starts off on a rough note. These are the words that Moshe spoke to all of Israel. Rashi starts off the Parsha interestingly. He says, why did he speak to all of Israel? Because these were words of rebuke. Moshe Rabbeinu rebuked them for what they did on Midbar, their travels in the Mizbar, or Arava, Ben Teufel, Ben Lovon, B'di Zahav. Kitzer, all of these places were problems where the Jews argued, no water, no man, food is not good, right? You ever hear that claim? Food was terrible, right? The man, they made the golden calf. So Moshe Rabbeinu rebuked him. He said, 40 years he stayed quiet in the desert. You don't find that he rebuked the Jews. Here he rebuked them. Why? As Rashi explains, because he was about to die. He was about to leave this world. And that's when he rebuked them. Why not before? Because if you rebuke them during their lifetime, you're going to have more chances to rebuke them again. And that's what Moshe Rabbeinu was trying to avoid. Right? Stay with them, be with the Jews. They're a tough nation, stiff-necked we're called, right? Be with them till the very end. But don't let them think that they were angels. No. People make mistakes. People always make mistakes. So Devarim starts off with a rebuke of the Jewish nation. And it goes through the Parsha. The rebuke is the entire Parsha. And Moshe Rabbeinu says to them, for example, they could have gone to Eretz Yisrael. If they didn't send the spies, as Rashi explains, they wouldn't even have had to use weapons. They could have conquered the land without weapons. Imagine that. Can you imagine today the Palestinians are fighting and arguing? You can't use a weapon against them. I mean, Israel doesn't usually use a weapon. But you can't use it. There, they would have taken over the entire land of Canaan without one shot fired. The idea is that if you have emunah in Hashem, it works. They lacked emunah. They had to send spies, tell us what the land's about and whatnot, and they ruined their chances to go in battle-free. That's what they did. It's the same thing today. Don't think differently. Today, there's problems. The land is in turmoil, especially in these days. There's plans for judicial reform. A good part of the nation is rebelling. They don't want judicial reform. Actually, Reb Nosson talks about it. What's judicial reform, or what's called tikkun hamishpat, to rectify justice? Reb Nosson writes in Hilchos Eruvin, if a person complains to Hashem, why me? Why am I suffering? It's a blemish in your faith in Hashem's judgment. Right? It doesn't mean that you shouldn't pray for a better life. Of course you should. Always pray for a better life. But there's problems. The whole world has problems. Today, the world that we live in 2023, There's absolute problem. The whole world is crazy, right? Russia attacked Ukraine, right? You have Iran. They have nothing else to do but build an atom bomb. Nothing else to do, right? The people are starving. North Korea build an atomic bomb. The people, you can't even find mice and rats in North Korea. Why not? Because the people capture them and eat them because they have no food, right? But they have to build an atomic bomb, right? You have Pakistan has problems. All over the world there's problems. Syria, where they killed 600,000 people of their own, no problem, right? In other words, the world is crazy. Look what's going on in the States. Woke, whatever that means, I don't know. But you have a woke mentality, right? So that 3% of the population dictates to the rest of the population how they're allowed to address a person. If they're a person, are they male or they're female, or are they who knows what? Doesn't matter. Woke is what runs the country today. Right? You don't have to be honest. You don't have to be truthful. You don't have to be right. You have to be woke. Go figure it out. Tikkun HaMishpat means rectify the judgment. Do what's right. That's what it means. And that's what Moshe Rabbeinu starts off the Parshat Devarim. He says, you asked me to appoint judges? I appoint the judges, right? But the judges have to be good people, have to be people who are clean. They don't have a personal stake, which is what every one of the Israeli Supreme Court judgments has. Personal stake in their honor, in their position. Doesn't matter whether they're right or wrong. They're the ones who dictate to the country. Because that's the only dictatorship that exists in Israel today. The dictatorship of the Supreme Court. They decide whatever works for them will work for everybody else. So that's not Tikkun HaMishpat. That's not rectifying judgment. Right? Rectifying judgment is to do what's right according to Hashem. To do what's right according to the emes, according to the truth of the matter. Okay, for instance, Israel, the Supreme Court just last week voted that anyone who overstays their visa, or if they came to the country without a visa, you're allowed to stay. Just like that. You could create an imbalance in who's a citizen and who's not. That's what the Supreme Court did, right? You're trying to mimic the United States. The United States doesn't do everything right either. Okay, whatever the case is, Moshe Rabbeinu was telling us that whatever goes wrong in the nation, the fault lies with the Supreme Court judges. They should know that, right? It would be nice if they thought about that and they realized the situation that they're in. Anything that goes wrong in the country today is all the cause of the Supreme Court. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu was telling you. Okay, but let's go further in the Parsha. Moshe Rabbeinu then begins to recount, I appointed judges like you asked me to, and I said, let's go through the desert, but you went and you fought against Hashem, you sent spies, and Hashem said you're going to stay 40 years in the desert, and that's what it is. So they did that, but then they had to conquer people. Midian, Moab, Balak called over Bilam to help him eradicate the Jewish people. And the Jews withstood it. There was a test. Some of them failed the test with Bilam. They stayed with the Midianite women out of religious weddings. They did not perform a religious union, and they suffered for it. 24,000 people died in a plague. And then they came to the border of Sichon and Og. Sichon was a tremendous warrior. Og, his brother, was even more powerful. And the two of them were meant to protect the land of Israel from the Canaanites, to protect them from any invaders. The Jews were going to invade the land. So they first had to conquer Sichon and Og. Right? The Zohar says that Og was a man who did chesed. Right? He did chesed, kindness. What did he do? When there was the battle of the 4 kings against the 5, that's in Genesis 15, right? Og ran away from the battle, and he came and told Abraham, our forefather, that Lot was captured. So he did a chesed, a kindness. 400 years later, Moshe Rabbeinu was afraid to battle Og because he did that one chesed. Imagine that. This is what the Torah is telling us. There are people who do good, and they're not worthy people. And because they're not worthy people, so they have a merit. And Hashem always pays for a merit. So Og lived a few hundred years. He actually survived the flood from Noah. So it was some 500 years that Og was alive until he finally was defeated in battle by Moshe Rabbeinu. The idea is, come and see the power of chesed. We do a good deed, it lasted Og 500 years. Anyone who does a good deed, a Jew, a non-Jew, doesn't matter. You do a chesed, you do a kindness, there's a reward for it. If you're smart, you'll save the reward for the world to come, because there it's eternal. If you're not that smart, you'll accept the favors of Hashem in this world. So, Sichon and Og stood by the border of Israel. What does this mean? Rav Nosson explains that when you want to go to Israel, a sanctified land, a land of holiness, a land where you could actually begin to perceive Hashem and recognize Hashem's hand in the way the country exists. There are klipos, there are husks that surround it and make it difficult. And that's what we have today. Today, the land of Israel is going up and up, right? In the early 50s, when the land was brand new, a lot of difficulties, a lot of poverty, right? Today, Baruch Hashem, people are able to manage. Doesn't mean poverty is not here. There's plenty of poverty, but that's all over the world. But the country itself is a major factor in business, high-tech, agriculture, medical. So many things that Israel does today, right? But what do we have? We have the husks. We have the klipos. We have the Arabs, Palestinians, they call themselves, right? They're stopping people. This the Zohar said. Zohar at the end of Parshat Va'era said, the time will come when it will be time for the Jews to go back to Israel, and it's the Arabs that will prevent the entire Jewish nation from returning to its land. So we know this is going to take place. We know this is taking place. But we also know that Moshe Rabbeinu said that in the end, we will prevail. In the end, we will come out on top, right? And you see it happening every year. Take a look at how much there's problems in the land of Israel, right? Rabbi Nachman has a whole lesson on it. It's called Chavolim Nofnu Li Banimim, lesson 71 in the second part, Kutam Moran, where it talks about that there is a mindset of the Holy Land, which is pure and unity and love between fellow men. And then there's a mindset of diaspora, where there is not unity, where there is strife and arguments. He said, if that's the case, then the land of Israel should be free of arguments. We see there's plenty of arguments over here. Plenty. How does it happen? Because the mindset of Chutz La'aretz wants a tikkun hamishpat. It wants things to be right? And it can't be right in Chutz La'aretz. It needs the power, the sanctity, the holiness, the unity of the land to become pure. But that's a full discussion, hopefully next week, the week of Tisha B'Av. We'll talk about it. Mirz Hashem, this week will merit to see the coming of Mashiach, the building of the Beis HaMikdash, and the full redemption of Klal Yisrael, where we all get back to Eretz Yisrael. Amen.